Hey guys, now that we've gone through all these different types of animals, let's talk about drawing animals from imagination. The first step towards learning how to draw animals from imagination is to build a strong visual library. And what I mean by visual library is a collection of all the visual data that you have stored inside your brain. Every time you observe something, when you study or draw something, you're adding into this mental database. And this visual library is what will allow you to take things apart and create new designs, draw from imagination, and basically it allows you to execute your ideas on paper. It takes research, observation, and a lot of repetition to build up that library. The more you draw something, the more you cement that subject into your brain. When you draw, think of it as if you're taking visual notes. And even when you're drawing straight from reference, draw to understand and not to replicate. This is why studying proportion and form is so important. So, in the past chapter, we used 4 steps to break down the different types of animals. We used side views, basic form breakdowns, callouts, and introduced movement. And let's say you're trying to draw a very specific animal from imagination. So I'm going to start with this angler. Using reference, I'm going to try and gather as much information as I can about this animal. I want to find a top view, a side view, maybe a shot of it in motion. And the first 2 steps will be the most important thing. It can be tempting to breeze through the thumbnailing process, but take your time, really get to know your animal, and find the proportions that make this animal what it is. There will always be some feature of the animal that's unique to it, and this is what you want to maintain and emphasize. For example, with this angler, if I change the proportion of the mouth and the eyes, it would lose the characteristics that make it what it is, and I wouldn't really communicate that it's an angler. I can change the length, the overall shape of the body, and it still reads as this fish. And mastering proportion and perspective will give you the freedom to introduce organic movement and let you play with different interpretations and different angles. Doing callouts of different parts of the animal can also help you deepen your understanding of a subject. Taking that time to really closely observe the construction of a foot or the way an eye is structured is going to allow you to simplify and interpret what you already know. Also, keep in mind that while repetition is important, you want to keep pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. Get comfortable with making mistakes and learn to evaluate your work objectively instead of getting caught up in whether or not you've made a good drawing. So now what I'm going to do is not take from any single reference photo, but use multiple references to come up with my own interpretation of this animal. So I'm going to try to project the proportions and forms that I studied and see if I can recreate this animal from partially using reference and partially using my own visual library. We can still look at the references in front of us, you're just not replicating what you see verbatim. So as I'm drawing my interpretation of this fish, I'm choosing to emphasize things like the spacing in between the teeth, the distance from the eyes to the mouth. I decided to push them closer together. And I also really want to bring out all of these really interesting folds and wrinkles that are happening on the surface of the fish. This is going to help give the fish a little bit more character and volume. Now, I want you guys to try sketching an animal using both reference and your imagination together. So pick an animal, preferably one that you find interesting, and compile as many reference photos as you can. And even take a look at some videos of the animal in motion to get an idea of the full range of the animal. And even look at some videos of the animal in motion. Go through the side view, basic form, and callouts, and focus heavily on the proportions and form breakdowns. After you feel acquainted with your animal, try sketching it in perspective without directly copying a reference photo. So you can still have multiple references in front of you, just make up your own pose or motion. Alright, let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!